Welcome to the live stream this week. I'm afraid I couldn't make it last week, but we should do some good catch up this week. This is the Coding with Mark live stream that I do most weeks at 2 p.m. GMT on a Wednesday. And they're usually pretty Python heavy. I considered calling it a Python live stream, but I have too many interests to restrict it to one language. So at the moment, it's a Python live stream. And I have to say, today's stream is going to be very Python heavy. We will be working with MongoDB a little bit, but I'm going to say that if you're coming here for deep MongoDB knowledge, we're going to cover some stuff about data modeling, how to design your schema, or really how to actually architect your client side so that you're safely updating data in the database. But mainly, we're going to be diving deep into some sort of intermediate to advanced Python. I think I might start off with some meta classes today. I had a little experiment earlier to sort of clean something up in the library that I'm going to be working in, and meta classes were a nice solution. And then we're going to fix some problems. So for anybody who hasn't been here before, I'm building what's called an object data mapping library, or an ODM. There are a few production quality ODMs out there. I'm trying to build something a little bit different. Let me share my screen so I can flick through some information. So there we go. No. There we go. That's a good layout. So where should we start? So first, we'll start with the GitHub repo. So I've been working on this library. It's all available online at the moment. This is actually not up to date from the last episode, but I left the code broken and I didn't want to push it up to GitHub. So there's not even a branch, I think, at the moment with these changes in. So the idea here is really that I'm attempting to abstract out some design patterns that we've identified at MongoDB that can help make your data lookups more efficient, keep your indexes within a certain size. There's various different patterns that we've got. There's a link to those design patterns in the description on YouTube. So if you haven't come across those design patterns before, definitely check those out. So this is really the purpose of my ODM. Is I want to create these objects that are populated with data from the database, but don't necessarily represent it in the same way as that data is actually stored in the database. A really simple example here, going through the README, is that if I have some BSON data, here I've got an ID. Every document has an underscore ID, and it's an object ID. Those can sometimes be a little bit difficult for serialization to JSON, and so I might want to map that to a different type. And in fact, I haven't got a good example of that. I thought I was converting it to a string, but the idea is that if I create, this is user profile data. If I create a class called user profile, which extends my document from this library, then I can instantiate it with the BSON data, and I can access the various fields that are in there. So ID is an object ID, but let's say the user ID has been stored as a string, and that's not really a string. It's actually numeric data, or it might go the other way. You might want to change the type. So I actually want to force this to be an integer for my client code. When I configure the user ID field, I can say I want to transform that with the int function, the int constructor, and then whenever I access user ID from then on, it'll be an int instead of a string. So there's other things that this library encapsulates that I really should document in this README. If you change a field name, or you have a sort of cascade of field names, so you might want to look up user ID followed by ID followed by username or something like that. And if the first one doesn't exist, then try the second field. And if the second one doesn't exist, then try the third field. There's a way of configuring a field called a fall through field with those field names, and it just does that transparently behind the scenes. I've done a few things with reads. And in the last session, 2 weeks ago, I abstracted out what's called the subset pattern. So you can wrap a sequence. Let's go to the code, because I've got a test in here somewhere. I can configure a sequence. Now this will then wrap every item in that array with follower. So I get an array of objects, or at least an iterable of objects. But sometimes you don't want to store all of those, a whole array of data in your document because it might get too big. In general, the advice is you should never store more than 200 items in an array. And so you might have a separate collection to actually store the extended data. So if you're looking at a blog and you might have the first 10 comments, but if people scroll down, then you might request the next 10 comments and the next 10 comments, and those can be stored in another collection for efficiency's sake. So I've added to sequence field this ability to say, well, the rest of the sequence is in the followers collection. And when you want to start iterating through them, then call this here's the aggregation essentially. So it's called at runtime, so you can look up the user ID and insert it into the aggregation, and then every document that comes back from here will be wrapped in follower and then just yielded to the client code. So this sort of transparently hides the fact that some of your array is embedded in your document, some of your array is actually a lookup, so looked up with a dollar lookup operator. But you could do a bunch of stuff with this. This doesn't have to be necessarily documents in another collection. You could be calculating this data. There's anything you can do with the aggregation framework could be used there. So I haven't really thought about the full potential of that, but that's kind of what I implemented last week. So I've got a few things about looking up data and reading data from the database, but what we hadn't really covered was how to update data in the database. And there's some principles I didn't really cover this last time, but one of the principles that I really want to adhere to is from this document called the 6 Principles for Building Robust Yet Flexible Shared Data Applications. This is called the 6 Principles of resilient evolvability. I think that was the original name of this blog post by my colleague Paul, but there's some words in there that are sort of unusual, like evolvability, and so I think it was rewritten to make them more understandable what this post was about. But there's a video. I highly recommend this if you're building a set of services that all interact with a single database. There's some really smart ideas in this post that are really boiled down to this: support optional fields, only ask for fields that are your concern. So this is again like one of those cases where you probably want to project in your query to make sure that you're not pulling in a load of data that isn't relevant to your application. So if I'm building a Twitter clone, which is my sort of example application here, I might have some analytics in there, analytics data associated with each user, and I don't want that to be in the client application. I don't want the client application to ever see that. So I would probably filter that out. So I'd only ask for the fields that the specific service that I'm working with knows about. And the same with updates. So this is the problem with, I think, some of the ODMs out there is when you make changes to a document and then you press save, it's essentially doing an overwrite of the document. And this is the kind of thing that I think in key value stores you might have to do. But with MongoDB, one of the powerful things about MongoDB is that you can make multiple separate updates to a document in a single call, and they're all applied atomically. And they also won't then overwrite or erase fields that you don't know about in a document. If you take the whole document, modify it, and write it back, that's fine. But if you're only looking at a subset of fields and then you try and save that as the full document, you're going to remove data that you weren't prepared for. That you didn't know was in the database. So that's one of the principles that I'm trying to implement at the moment. I want to keep a record of every change that's made to the document, so that then when I come to save it, it becomes a set of fields that need to be overwritten in the database. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with this, because there's other operators with update, like increment and things like that. It would be nice to be able to sort of configure that as a set of updates to a document, but I'll worry about that further down the line. So this is actually where I left the code at the end of the last live stream. Very unsatisfying. I had recursion errors, which are always kind of terrifying whenever you're working with sort of dynamic programming and things. I'd overwritten set atta. So I'm changing the way that data is written to my object. And sadly, I didn't have time to fix this, but I think I've got it all down now. There are a bunch of changes that I need to make to this. So I think this is really as good a place to get started as any. So this is the problematic code, and I do now know why that's not working. There's essentially two types of changes to a document that I need to intercept. Now, one is this set_atta thing. So this is, I want to think of this as a fallback function. So this is just like if I'm changing setting an arbitrary value. So if I decided I want to now store a new value on my document, then I would just call document dot. Have I got an example down here? Test update field. So there's known fields like this, and these are descriptors. So this is handled via a method that's defined on these descriptors called this. So that's something I need to work with. But there's another kind, which is where I haven't got a field defined. So I've got a dynamic field, and I might want to say kind of profile and give it a profile non-existent field equals new value. So this then is going to actually call set_atta on the document behind the scenes. And that is something that I want to intercept, but it's also causing problems at the moment. So I've commented out that function, and then I'm just going to run my tests again and see how much is now broken. So that test should fail, which is great, right? Because this is the feature that I'm implementing. By the way, if you're in the comments, if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, feel free to drop it into the comments, or just say who you are and where you are, because it's always interesting to see where the audience in these live streams is coming from. It's one of the best things about broadcasting on the internet is, potentially time zones permitting, you get people from all over the world, which is kind of awesome. So just putting that to one side at the moment, I'm now going to look at my field definition. So this is what this is here. And because this is a descriptor, when I set a value on the instance on this followers or underscore ID, behind the scenes, it's going to call this magic method. That's how descriptors work. And it's going to call it with the owning object and the new value that's being set. So the right-hand side of an equals. So this here's test value 4. Now I've implemented this. I implemented this at the end of the last live stream to say I want to store that field away in a field inside. So I've got this sort of magic document field that's really just a dict that represents the actual data that's being stored in the database. And then I just want to set that. So nothing's really getting set on self on the document, in this case, profile. I realized when I looked at this code, because I'd been coding a bit frantically at the end of the last session, that actually there's more going on here than there should be. It's not really a unit test as such. So I'm just going to get rid of follower, and I'm going to get rid of followers. So we're dealing with one field now. And then what you might notice is that I'm referring to user ID here, but this isn't user ID, this is underscore ID. So that's actually a bug. Because I want to test this descriptor, and I haven't had the chance to do that yet. So let's run PyTest again. Ta-da! Already fixed it. So I've fixed descriptors. There's one more thing I want to do here. So when the data is retrieved from this field, it's run through this transformer that just kind of converts this to whatever type you want in the client application. And I'm thinking, if somebody was to set the wrong value, then do I want to transform it when I'm writing it to the database? And I can't quite decide, but it does have a nice feature if I do that I can then test that it's actually being transformed. So if I was to set this transform to lower, this is going to fail, right? Because now when I access user ID, it's going to call get, it's going to transform it through this lower method, and that's going to return it in lowercase. So let's just try that. There we go. So it's now coming back as lowercase, which is good. So I know that transform is working on get. Where I access it directly on the doc, it's not coming through here. So it's not going to be transformed. So it should come back as uppercase. Yeah, so that does work. I'm trying to think whether that's the way I want it to work, because I think I think what I might want to do is run it through the transformer. Think of it as a sort of validate. Well, maybe validate is the wrong word, but it's sort of ensuring that it's the correct value. This function might do nothing, but it might, it might just validate it, or it might convert it if necessary. So I think that's probably fair. So now this second value should be lowercase. Let me know if my font's too small, because I do have a reasonably. Oh, I suppose I can make the terminal. Oh no, for me that's too big. But let me know if you'd rather I had it bigger, because obviously this is partly for you as well as me, giving you a chance to code on this cool library. I love the fact that MongoDB let me write meta classes in my my working day, because that's something we're about to do. Okay, so that's cool. That's working. That's working for fields that are defined in the object. But we've got this idea of a strict profile in the document definition. I got this idea of a sort of strict or non-strict class, but I don't. This has been annoying me since I wrote it, because this is actually on the instance. It's being set on self rather than on the class, and what I really want it to be per subclass. So I want, profile might have a fixed set of fields, in which case, so that makes it strict. That means I won't allow it to dynamically take attributes. But then I might have something else that's got, like, you're being flexible with the contents of it, and then where you allow that. So that's where strict is false, which is the default. But that should be on the class, not the instance. So let's write a meta class to make this happen. So, I mean, it is one of those things where I could just define it here. I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in a meta class, because apart from anything else, it's quite a fun technique. I might end up taking it out later, but I'm sure you're all here for the meta classes. So let's go ahead with that. I gave a talk in Australia a few years ago on the Python type system and meta classes. If you search for my name, Mark Smith, and meta classes made easy, I think you'll come up with a video of the talk. It's a 70-minute talk, so it's a significant watch, but it's one of the talks I'm most proud of. So let me write a class. So meta classes extend type, usually. I don't think they technically have to, but type is the superclass of class. And type is also the superclass of itself. It's a little rabbit here in the inheritance. That's not important, but I can't remember the signature. We implement new here. This will be called when a class is requested, essentially when a class is defined in the code that uses this meta class. I think it takes class. It takes a dictionary. That's the last field. Let me just look this up, because I think I've got the document open anyway. Data model. If you haven't read this data model document, like, this is just the best document in the whole of the Python documentation. It explains everything about how objects and inheritance and meta classes work in Python. It's surprisingly readable, in my opinion. But yeah, that's. Let me search for type, maybe. Let's search for meta class. I found it really quickly earlier. Oh, often you don't have to implement a meta class, because you've got init subclass now. Oh, that's interesting. It takes keyword arguments. Class and then default name. Oh, this is exactly what I want. Oh, I don't need a meta class. That's so disappointing. Okay. This is. I'm going to implement this instead. I did say I might get rid of this in the end. Actually, no. Let's do it. Let's do it this way anyway, and then we can get rid of it, so you can see how init subclass works if you haven't worked with that before. But first, I need to find. This is all a bit narrow, isn't it? I can't read. Callable types, custom classes, class instances, There we go. Type. Oh, that's how I need to find the arguments, because it's this one: name, basis, dict, and then keywords. Cool. Hello. You got a hello from somebody with a Docker avatar, and that's kind of cool. And hello, Vina. Nice to have you here. Thank you for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. Let me know what you're here for. That's always cool. I hope you're in for some sort of deep Python, because that's kind of what I'm doing. Okay, so let me paste these parameters in here. So this is the name of the class, and then this is the a list or a sequence of the classes that are inherited from, and then there's a dictionary of all the fields that have been defined on the class, and then there's keywords. I'll get to that in a minute. And this will return type.new name, basis, dict, and then keywords. Cool. So that just part those. Oh yeah, that's it. I'm going to say that's result equals, because I'm going to mess with it, and then return result. And then, so one of these parameters. So normally with a meta class, well, let's have a look. So this is where you'd normally put your class inheritance in, and by default you inherit from object, but that's implicit, so you don't need to put it in. But you can also put meta class, and what this says is, when I'm creating this document or any subclass of document, I want you to use this meta class to create that class. And so here I'm actually just, it's not doing anything special. So this should just work. Oh, it didn't. New takes 3 positional arguments, but 4 were given. I had a feeling there was a 4th argument. Okay, let me type name basis. Yeah, I think it's because this. I think I actually need. It's sort of a self. Self is sort of the wrong. X is not a type object. It's a string. Let me Google, because that's what we all do. Python meta classes. Here we go. I have seen this document before, so I'm going to kind of jump to the useful documentation. Custom meta classes, new. Yeah, this is a really good document, by the way. Yeah, CLS name basis dict. That's what I thought. Try this again. X is not a type object. Let's see. Types. Oh, super new. Yeah, of course it is. This just fills in that first parameter with myself, which is CLS. So this should. Nope, still getting this. This is great. I love it when things don't work, especially when there's people watching. So name basis dict. CLS name basis dict. Oh, okay. There. Oh. Okay. I did have this before. So now we're checking self._strict, which isn't defined, but I'm going to define it here. So it takes these keywords arguments that just get passed up. Strict is one of them. Well, at the moment it is, but I'm going to explicitly reference it. And I'm going to say by default, I think documents should be flexible. So we're going to keep strict as false. And then I'm just going to set it on here as _strict. Strict. Now, the nice thing is this should just continue to work. There we go. See? But if I want, when I'm defining a over on the right-hand side, now when I'm defining a class, I can say strict true, and then that's a parameter to the class, which is kind of neat, right? And then if I can print. I'm going to have to fail so that you can see what I print, but print profile dot strict, which is this value that I'm setting, and there you go. Strict is true. So because I've set it here. That's quite a nice feature. And then all profiles, every instance of profile will have this value set on it. Yeah, I think later on, if these become more configurable, I may end up doing something like some of the ODMs, and I think Django does, where you have a sort of defined in a class called config or something like that, and then you would say strict equals true, something like that. But at the moment, that isn't what I'm going for, so I'm going to use this feature of Python. So now we have a meta class. But I actually don't need to do that. I can define it inside the document, because everything extends document, all of these subclasses, I think, anyway. And in fact, let's change this to a proper test. And in fact, I'm just going to dev test meta. There we go. Profile. I'll make this a strict profile. I'm okay. Strict equals true. Just make sure that that's coming through. And then let's try the same, but with the default, and just make sure that that's. I'm just going to remove this, and then we'll assert that it's, oops. And I need double equals. If you see me do this kind of thing, do shout out in the comments. It can be extremely useful. Vina has asked me to make my text larger. So if you're on your mobile, this is going to be difficult. So okay, I'm gonna. It was kind of helpful to have the two files side by side, but if you can't see, then that's not a lot of use. So let me just. There you go. So hopefully that's better for you. This is very big on my screen. It's a bit like I'm coding on a mobile phone now. So, but yeah. So, okay. So now we're getting recursion depth again. Not entirely certain why. Test sequence field superset. Yeah, and test meta. Let's have a look at the actual error. I mean, I know it's a recursion error, but what's it actually recursing on? So it's asserting that user ID is 4. Init subclass takes no keyword arguments. So let's fix that, because that's actually, I think that's the source of the problem. So test meta. So here we've got init subclass somewhere. Oh, no, we haven't, because I haven't implemented it. So let's implement that. I think okay, this is basically the same. Self. Now I can't remember what the parameters for init subclass are. So let me go back to the browser and make this a bit bigger as well. Oh, look, they haven't covered init subclass in that blog post. So let's go back to here. Init subclass takes the class. I'm not sure what default. Okay, that's cool. And I want strict equals false. CLS.strict equals strict. So this is basically doing the same thing as that meta class, except that it's just not doing it in a meta class. So this is something that was added in Python 3.6, I think. So it's been around for a while, and it just means this is something that people need to do. It's like if you could use this to register a subclass. So sometimes you want to list all of the subclasses of something, and you could use this for that. In this case, I'm just sort of allowing it to pass a parameter in the sort of the class constructor, which is kind of what this is. Yeah, so hopefully this will work. Anyway, let's try it. PyTest, yeah, woo! It's all green. So yeah, so it's kind of handy. The other thing that the people used to use metaclasses for was as part of class construction. In fact, no, it's probably better to show you the actual the code here. As part of class construction, if somebody's, let's say, attached a field to it, you might need to keep a list of these fields, these special fields. Django's metaclasses does exactly this. The Django model likes to keep track of the fields that have been defined on each model class. So they use metaclasses because Django has been in existence since Python 2. But yeah, in Python 3 world, we can do this without metaclasses these days. I think there's been an overall sort of attempt by the designers of the Python language to remove most of the reasons you would ever want to write a metaclass, because they're kind of complex. Whereas just writing a hook here for when somebody subclassed you is much nicer. Oh yeah, set name. That's called when a field is attached to a document in this case, and so that allows me to just get my name, like what's the name of this field, which is usually on the left hand side, right? But this will be called, this constructor will be called, and then later on set name will be called with this as the parameter. So my field knows that its name is user ID, which is kind of handy. Okay, so we got that test working. So now I've got, I can set strict as true or false on the class level. So that's really nice. What was the other thing that I was going to do? Yes. So the thing that isn't working at the moment is on this profile, if I want to set a dynamic field. So if I take my profile, non-existent, existent. Extant. Yeah, I think it's existent. Equals new value. And then I should be able to assert that it was just attached to the in a document, right? The _doc field. So I should be able to do something like this: non-existent. And this should be new value, but it won't be because I haven't implemented this yet. So a line that will work is asserting that field's been set, because it will have just been attached to profile, right? It's just be set on self, because that's what happens when you dynamically add something to an object. It adds it to the self. But what I don't want that, I want it to be inserted into the document that eventually we're going to be updating. So let's make that happen. So this is the thing that kind of failed last week, because I was trying to get too much done in one go. And yeah, you shouldn't do that. You should work on one thing at a time. So we've got everything else working for intercepting updates, but we haven't got this. So there's a couple of things here. Firstly, strict is no longer set on self. It's set on the class. So I don't need to worry about that. These are the sort of special variables. And at the moment, it's assuming that everything is strict. This was my attempt to sort of get rid of the recursion. So I'm going to comment that out for the moment. Oops. There we go. And what I'm going to say is that normally, if I want to just do the normal thing when setting an attribute, if I want to extend this, but do the normal thing, I need to call sort of my superclasses set attribute. So I haven't done it with super before. So let's just see how this goes. Super set attribute self name value. Let's just see if that works. Okay. So it didn't work. And I think that's because I've set self. on it, and I wouldn't normally pass that in. Expected 2 arguments, got 3. This is set at a, yeah. So I think it's just name of value. Gira. Okay, this is cool because this is now we're back to where we were, right? So I've implemented set at a, and it's working with the fields that are set, but it's not working with dynamic values. So what I actually want to do is get it with dynamic values. How can I put it? So first, I want to see if it's already been defined on the class. So if there's a field on the class. And I'm going to want to be clever about this later on, but for now, I can say if the field name is in self.dict, then I just want to do the normal thing, right? And otherwise, I want to set it on the inner document. So self doc name equals value. This might actually pass. Nope. Oh, evil. So why didn't that work? That didn't work because doc, it's looking up doc as a field on doc. It's basically calling get atta with underscore doc here. So it's going underscore doc, I think. Anyway, so let's just put in an extra if here. If atta is doc, then just return the document. And this is super attribute. Let's try that. Nope. Cocktail has no attribute underscore doc. I had this before and I can't quite remember. Can I just... Why doesn't it have an attribute underscore doc? That is because underscore doc hasn't been set at the very beginning. Yes. So I only want to do this if the name isn't one of these. So basically, if it's one of these, then I'm just going to set it directly. Or if it's a new variable, if it's something that's in dict, then I'm going to just set it normally. Which means, in the case of the descriptors, in the case of the fields, it's going to call underscore dunder set on those. Okay, so we're still getting the same problem. Why are we getting this problem? Let's have a look at where the problem is occurring. So it's get attribute. And the atta is underscore doc. I'm intrigued. Let's print out the F. That's got to be an F string. Got to put an F at the front. So yeah, my state. This is my state basically. So for some reason I don't have an underscore doc, but for some reason I'm trying to get the underscore doc. So I think this might be a kind of recursive thing. I need to find out where this is happening. So profile equals profile. So this is where I'm actually creating an instance of my new profile, and then it's setting underscore doc, which is then calling set atter and trying to set it on underscore doc. So that's where the get atter is. So yeah, so it's this line here is then going to set atter here. And then it's somehow ending up in there. So if, it's name in. So there, we want to be dropping into this branch, and it's because the name is in here. Right. So let's see how this goes. Yes, we're back to our sort of failing test. So this is great, actually. I'm going to leave that comment there because I haven't dealt with strict or non-strict classes. So at the moment, it's assuming that everything is not strict, everything is relaxed. So let's go back to the test. Oh, that's interesting. It's getting back where is it? On this line, it's getting back the value in all caps. So why is that happening? That implies that when it's being set, it's not being transformed. This is actually why I wanted to do that, why I wanted to set the value on save. Why is that not going through? So this set atter should be excuse the print statement debugging. I'm an amateur, really. Set name to value, and then I'm gonna go into the field definition because this set atter here should be going into this field set and calling set here, and it should be transforming it. So I just want to see if this line's being printed out. This is the one that I think is not being called, but I don't quite know why. Whoa, that's a lot of printing now. Why are we getting that? Oh yeah, because it's setting lots of stuff. Now, what was the last thing here? Set underscore DB to database. Oh, and then it's not ever setting anything again? That's very strange. Wait. That. Oh yeah. Oh yes, that's no. Why? Sorry about this. Let's see if we can see that value. Test. Okay. And then it should be setting profile.userid, which means, oh, okay. Oh, it should be calling one of these, but it doesn't seem to be calling either. You know, this went a lot more smoothly before when I was preparing for this this live stream. So let's have a look at the document. I'm probably doing something silly. So we've got we know that set atter is here, but that's why it's not calling it, because it's inside here. So it's basically going, what am I doing? I'm looking at the wrong dictionary. So, oops. So what I want to do is see if there's a field been set on the class. And that's this dictionary is all the things that have been set on the class. So in this case, it should contain an item called user_ID, and then the value would be this field object. So that's good. That's good. We've still got lots of output, and then we've got setting transform. So it should. Oh yeah, and it is setting the value. Okay, cool. I can get rid of these nasty print statements now. And the last one's in set on field. Where's field? There. So this is all good. Now we've got our assertion, and I think it's a typo. So new space value, new space value, new space value. Yes. Okay. So if you're keeping up, and I hope I haven't been going too fast or kind of confusing things by making mistakes. What we have is the ability to define a user profile class, and we can predefine fields on here. And these are used to change the value. They can be looked up on a different field in the document, underlying document, or they can transform it into a lowercase string if that's something that's useful. Anything you want, really. But you can also, with default documents or document subclasses, you can also set values that weren't predefined. So it's not a rigid schema, much like BSON itself, and then that will be stored inside the document, this sort of internal dict that's used to store away these values. So the one thing I haven't done is I haven't dealt with strict profiles. So let's do another test. Def test strict document. Update strict document, and this is more or less going to be the same. If you haven't watched the previous live streams, one of the sessions that I ran, we built a mini test framework. So if you saw me put these, if you use PyTest, these are fixtures, and this is a MongoDB client object, and this is a session object that will automatically be rolled back at the end of this test run. So I'm actually testing against a real MongoDB instance, but any changes I make are done in a transaction and then rolled back at the end. And it's like handful of lines of code. So just as a little diversion, if you're looking conf test, this is the thing that gets me my MongoDB client. I'm just getting the connection string from an environment variable, because you don't want to paste environment variables into code. That would be bad. Then I'm checking that the that's not even testing. I'll come back to that later. So yeah, it's just checking that it can contact the server, and then returning the client. So this is the thing that's actually passed into the test. But then this, which depends on the same client object, will start a session, start a transaction, and then it yields the session object. So this is the thing that you get with a rollback session fixture. And then at the end of running the test, it will then abort the transaction. So that cleans up all the data. And it's like, this can be used, anyone who's using PyTest and testing data against MongoDB, like this is all you need to be able to run your tests against a real database, but not have to manually delete fields or drop collections or whatever. So yeah, take advantage of MongoDB's transactions. So that's what I've got here. And I am actually looking up a document that I expect to be in the database. Oops. And I'm just going to get that Y. So Y is my Twitter clone. It's a pun, like, because Twitter was renamed to X, and Y is the next letter in the alphabet. And also, like, why did they rename Twitter to X? So I thought it was funny when I made it. I don't know how you feel about that. So we've got a profile. And I need to define the profile class because I'm doing that inside my test functions. So let's take this. This is going to be the main difference between the two. And this will be strict equals true. So now this should work. The first lot should work. But the next one shouldn't. And this, I should be able to stick a fails on here, but I can't quite remember the semantics of that. So I'm just going to stick a try. Actually, I'm going to stick a fail after it. Yeah, try. Can I do that? I'm not sure I can do that. Anyway, oh, I can just do that, of course. And then here I can do fail. Set dynamic value. If anybody has the docs open for PyTest, like feel free to tell me the correct way to do that, because you can do. I think I can do with fails, but I haven't done it for a while, so I'm just going to leave it like this. It doesn't like that. Exception. There we go. So let's try this. At the moment, this should fail. There we go. Should not be able to set a dynamic value. Cannot access local variable profile. It is not associated with the value. So, ooh, where is that coming from? Test update strict. Have I just updated the wrong? I updated the wrong function. Oh, what am I doing? I've been making a mess. So I think that's fine now. And then the next one, test update strict document. We've got strict equals true. Yeah. So I've got my initialization stuff in the wrong place. I don't know what I thought I was doing there. Sometimes when I'm talking and coding at the same time, not all the brain cells that are required for coding are firing. Okay, so that's my failed test update strict document, and it's tested with the message that I was hoping for. Okay, so let's fix this. So that should fail, and so it's just a question of making sure the logic is correct in the document set atta function. So here, this is why I kept this in, because I've already got my nice error definition. So here, if it's in the class strict, so basically if it's already set, or if it's a magic variable, then it will set it. And otherwise, at the moment, it's just setting it in the inner doc. But what I want to do is check. This is actually, I think this is going to end up slightly cleaner than my prep code. Else elif self dot strict. I think this should work. Yes. So there we go. Now we've got all the logic. We've got strict classes working. We've got relaxed classes working. We've got predefined fields working. And we've got dynamic fields working when the class is relaxed. So this is kind of, I've got everything here in place for next week when I'm actually going to be recording the changes to the document. So I think one of the things I might end up with is a sort of numeric field or a counter field, maybe. So I could have, and then the idea is like I could do something like counter.inc, and then that would store away an action that can then be set when you do an update. So when you then do kind of profile update, it will, what it's going to send to the server is profile.update, and then it's going to have the sort of this class's ID, and then it will be able to say, well, we're just going to increment counter by 1. That's the kind of thing that I want it to do. Just for increments. I might not implement that next week. What I'm going to be implementing next week is just when you set a value to new value, then it's going to store that away inside the profile. So there's going to be a new field inside profile. It's going to be like modified fields, and then that's just going to kind of record which fields have been changed, which fields have been set, and then that then becomes a $set, and then this would be new value. I hope that makes sense, because obviously this is just sketching code on the screen, but that's where we're going to go next Wednesday. We're kind of coming up against time. I think if I start anything else right now, I'll end up running way over time. So I think this is, given that the tests are passing, I think this is quite a nice place to stop this week. So I can spend some time after this and pushing this up to GitHub so you can have a look at the code, writing some documentation so it makes sense what's going on here. I feel like I've got these sort of predefined fields and strict and relaxed documents, and there's definitely some terminology there that I probably need to document a bit better. I hope you've enjoyed this session. As I said at the start, if you were here, it's been very Python heavy and not so much MongoDB heavy, but I think that's sort of the appeal of these live streams. I think I'm covering, you don't necessarily get to do all this magic dynamic programming involving meta classes and things in everyday code. And so it's quite nice with an ODM. You really do have the opportunity to, to use these features in real code. And then, it's kind of fun to see them tried out. Maybe I've sparked some ideas for your future project. So if you have any questions, you've got a couple of minutes. If you want to ask a question in the comments, if you enjoyed the meta classes stuff, let me know. We'll maybe do some more sessions on that kind of programming. We're going to be branching out a bit this year. I have a couple of interviews lined up. We've got some interviews with people inside MongoDB. We've got some really smart people, in Python developers specifically inside MongoDB, doing AI stuff, building frameworks and things. We've recently published a fast API bootstrap template, so to get you up and running with a production level containerized development environment for building fast API and MongoDB applications. So if that sounds interesting, you can Google for that. There is an announcement article on the MongoDB developer site. You can kind of connect with me on LinkedIn if that feels like something that you might want to do. If you have any ideas for future streams, do let me know. If you're enjoying the content, let me know. I also tend to announce the live stream starting on LinkedIn, so that might give you an extra chance to kind of turn up. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Hope to see you next week. Take care, everybody.